Morning. My name is Steve Feather. I am the father, legal guardian, and primary caregiver of Caleb Feather, a 25-year-old male with LGS. Continuing with the discussion from Jennifer, we're now in adult care. The title that I'm supposed to be talking about is What's It Like to Be a Caregiver of an Adult with LGS? It sucks. I'm done. Thank you. Have a good day. There are some things that I would ask you to address, and I appreciate you being here and listening to us as parents. The first thing is continuity of standards and practices. With 25 years of experience with this one particular patient, I am an expert in one patient. All levels of care for that patient, but only one patient. I've had plenty of opportunity to observe the various processes and procedures used in medical facilities and taught to caregivers during the pediatric period of care. We were spoiled growing up in Atlanta. We had access to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. Our neurologists were Dr. Nick Kraviecki, who, when Caleb was first diagnosed, would sit on the floor with him and play in the clinic. And that's how he evaluated how Caleb was doing. As we moved out of pediatrics into COVID and then into adult care, we were with Dr. Sandra Helmers, who cared for more than just my son, but looked at us as a family and made sure that as a family we were bearing care for. And then we entered adult care. The transition to adult care sure seems like we've moved backwards. I'm going to give you two examples, if you would, that I think are important, that matter to us. The first, in pediatric care, a breathing treatment begins usually with albuterol or levobuterol, followed by saline and mucomist, or as parents call it, the stinky egg stuff. That's the clinical term, by the way, for parents. In our, that's fine for adults, I think, maybe, I don't know. But they're combined in adult care into one single vial. They're delivered at the same time. In our at-needs and at-risk community, what happens is we're suddenly agitating the lungs and we haven't allowed the bronchodilator to work. Why this is okay for our kids now that they're adults, but it was not okay, and we as parents understood that in pediatrics, is beyond me. That's where that continuity just dropped off and left us. Second thing, anticonvulsants, as with most medications taken, should be on a regular schedule. As parents, we adapt our days and our weeks and our lives around a clock. It is time for Onfi. It is time for this med. It is time for that med, because it can't be within 4 hours of that med. It can't be within 3 hours of that food, or all of the different variables that we in 26 years have figured out and mapped on our own. Then we get to a hospital adult care. Policies in the hospital says, you know what, we have an hour in which we might be able to get the medication to your kid. So I bring my kid in with pneumonia, and guess what? Halfway through the treatment for pneumonia, now I have what? Seizures. I've lost control because nobody's given us our meds. You know what? We give him his meds anyway. Somebody sue me. I'm sorry, Kathy. She's covering her eyes over there going, I cannot believe I let him up here to talk. As a caregiver, I would expect those practices to be very similar to what we had in pediatrics. The next step is continuity of mutual trust and understanding. We've spent all of these years in pediatrics building a relationship with our medical team. These are teams that have adjusted care recommendations based on what they know about us as parents, what they believe we are capable of doing, and what is available to us. And then along comes adulthood. Referrals are made, charts are transferred, and this is a side note for you, and let's go ahead and get Oprah in here. Does every medical organization really need a portal? You get a portal, you get a portal, everybody gets a portal. I'm sorry, I don't have time to remember which doctor is in which portal and what was done at that test and who did what. I really want to open up one app and go, hey, look, here's everything. We're working on that. So patients and caregivers begin this relationship with a new adult medical team. Charts and records contain clinical data. They do not convey the very personal connections of trust and deference between the previous team and the patient or caregiver. I'm not entirely sure how we quantitate that. I do know that in business we have CRM, so we keep track of our customers. We keep track of notes on, was that a good customer, was that a bad customer? Can we allow that customer freer access in our software, in our hardware, or in our project? It's possible to keep track of this. We just got to figure out how. Hospitals are in the unenviable position of having no patient history when we show up in the ER, no experience with a particularly rare disease, and no way to know what questions really need to be asked. They're handcuffed by insurance, ruled from afar. But even in these situations, a caregiver should never have to hear, "You're just the mother," as my wife did recently. An adult RT was deep suctioning our son, causing distress. When my wife stepped in to advocate, the RT was dismissive. "You're just the mother." My wife, not only am I mother, I'm his legal guardian. The judge who gave me guardianship would love to have a discussion with you in the courtroom. We never saw the RT again. I will say, don't mess with my sweet southern peach of a wife. Mama bears can be very mean. These are things that I bring because they matter to us, they affected us, and I hear stories, and we're not the only ones. In conclusion, the realms of pediatric and adult care should not be seen as two separate countries with different cultures and practices where parents simply carry the chart across to the other country, and here I am, I'm a new resident. Hospital staff need regular, continued education about what practices have changed so that care continues relatively seamlessly from childhood to adulthood. Thank you.